Hello and welcome to the Activator Field podcast, the show that empowers you to wake up to your full potential and remember the powerful woman you've always been. Stay with me, and once a week, I'm going to share on this channel powerful strategies to take your life to the next level. You can achieve your biggest goals and dreams, and I'm here to support your journey. Hi, I'm Paula, known as the Consciousness Activator Queen, and I'm here with you to help you raise your consciousness, gently guide you to awaken your divine power and activate the limitless potential that's already inside you. In every episode, I am revealing ancient wisdom, powerful stories from my life, a life of experience, and an original perspective about challenges. I'm about to share with you practical techniques, show you how adversity can be turned into opportunities, and how you can become the one you've always dreamed to be, and, much more. Stay with me because you found me today for a reason. You are not here accidentally, but because you're ready for an upgrade. So, ready? Then let's go!
You know that feeling when you're like driving on the highway and you're making phenomenal time, the music is perfectly dialed in, and suddenly that little check engine light just dings on the
Oh,
dashboard.
yeah. And instead of pulling over to actually, diagnose the issue.
Right, you just slap a piece of black tape over the light, turn the radio up way louder, and press your foot harder on the gas.
It is honestly the ultimate modern reflex, because stopping requires acknowledging a problem. And acknowledging a problem threatens our momentum.
Yeah.
I mean, for highly driven people, losing momentum feels like a literal existential threat.
And I suspect that is exactly what you, the person listening to this right now, might be doing. Because you're a learner, right? You are inherently driven. You're constantly trying to optimize your workflow, gather more knowledge, just stay 10 steps ahead of everything.
Exactly.
But because your gaze is so intensely locked on the road ahead, you might actually be running on fumes and completely ignoring the mechanical failures happening under your own hood.
Yeah, we are living in this era of profound data asymmetry. Like, we are obsessively attuned to the analytics coming from our smartwatches, our quarterly performance metrics, our screen time reports.
Oh, the screen time reports are brutal.
Right. But we are shockingly illiterate when it comes to the complex biological and, psychological data being broadcast by our own nervous systems.
Which brings us perfectly to the mission of today's deep dive. We're going to decode the hidden physiological messages our bodies send us when we are creeping toward the absolute edge of burnout.
Yeah.
And our source material today is this profound piece of writing by an author named Paula. Now, Paula originally framed this material for a very specific demographic. So women over 40 in the corporate world who are, carrying that invisible mental load of trying to be everything to everyone.
But the underlying mechanics she maps out here are entirely universal. I mean, it really does not matter if you are a 20-something tech founder operating on zero sleep, or a stay-at-home parent managing absolute chaos, or an executive navigating endless restructuring. Paula's insights into nervous system regulation apply to literally any human biology under chronic stress.
They're going to walk through Paula's framework of 5 specific signs that your body is basically begging for a reset. And we aren't just admiring the problem today. We're going to explore the actionable, realistic mini practices she recommends to actually correct the course.
And as we navigate this, I want you to keep one central thesis in mind. These physical and emotional symptoms of burnout, the chronic exhaustion, the sharp irritability, the numbness, they are not character flaws.
Right.
They are not failures of your willpower or your work ethic. They are deeply evolved biological feedback mechanisms. Your body is functioning exactly as it was designed to. The only question is whether you have the courage to, translate the language it's speaking.
Let's get right into that translation then. Because the progression Paula outlines usually starts entirely internally, long before it ever leaks out into your external life.
Yeah, it's very quiet at first.
Exactly. So the very first indicator is profound brain fog and a total lack of cognitive clarity. It's that really heavy sensation where you wake up already feeling defeated.
Oh, that's the worst.
Right, you just move through your day in a blur, you're sitting in meetings, firing off emails, checking boxes. But at the end of the day, you feel this haunting emptiness, like you've accomplished absolutely nothing of substance.
What's fascinating here is how Paula frames this. Because society, and particularly corporate culture, conditions us to view brain fog as a discipline issue.
Like we just need to try harder.
Exactly. We treat it as a sign of laziness that can be solved by pushing through or, downing another double espresso. But physiologically, brain fog is an overwhelmed nervous system forcibly taking the reins. Yeah, when you are under chronic stress, your body is flooded with cortisol. And over time, that chronic cortisol exposure actually inhibits the prefrontal cortex, which is the part of your brain responsible for complex decision-making and executive function.
Okay, so if I think about driving in actual literal weather fog, the absolute worst thing you can do is press the accelerator.
Right, you'll crash.
Speeding up doesn't get you out of the fog faster. It just guarantees a disaster. You have to slow down to match your limited visibility. So is this cognitive fog essentially the body's way of, enforcing a speed limit on a brain that refuses to stop?
That is precisely the mechanism. I mean, we have this fight or flight response driven by the sympathetic nervous system. But when a threat like an endless to-do list or impossible expectations is relentless and fighting or fleeing hasn't resolved the stress, the nervous system just shifts gears.
It just gives up.
It drops into what is clinically called a dorsal vagal state, in a freeze response. The body literally pulls the plug on your high-level processing power. It enforces a localized brownout because it's frantically trying to conserve energy for basic survival.
Wow, that reframes the whole experience. So the fog isn't a malfunction at all. It's a protective forced shutdown.
Exactly.
So to lift that fog, Paula suggests a surprisingly simple practice. She says tonight, right before you go to bed, ask yourself one specific question. What is one thing I truly want for myself? And you're just supposed to listen for the answer without analyzing it.
Yeah, just listen.
But wait, I have to push back on this practice for our specific listeners. Because if you ask a highly driven type A optimizer to lie in bed in the dark and ask themselves what they truly want, you are likely going to trigger a massive anxiety spiral about the 5-year plan they are currently failing to achieve.
That's a very fair point.
Right. Is right before sleep really the optimal time to ask a heavy existential question?
It's a fair critique, and honestly, the friction you're describing is exactly why the parameters of the question are so narrow. Paula emphasizes asking for just one thing, not your grand life purpose.
Okay, so keep it small.
Yeah, maybe the answer is literally just, I want a cup of tea in silence tomorrow morning. And the reason before bed is effective is because you are entering a liminal state. Your conscious executive gatekeeper, that type A optimizer brain that wants to turn everything into a metric, it's tired. It's offline.
Ah, I see.
By asking a low-stakes, open-ended question in that specific window, you bypass the inner critic and give your nervous system permission to gently express a baseline need.
Okay, that nuance makes a huge difference. You aren't drafting a manifesto. You're just checking the baseline. Because I guess if we ignore that internal fog, our cognitive load eventually fails.
Inevitably.
And when our cognitive load fails, we can't maintain our usual high standards, which creates the perfect breeding ground for the second, sign chronic frustration and a pervasive sense of hopelessness.
Yeah, Paula defines frustration as the gap between what you want and what you currently have. Now, occasional frustration is completely normal.
Right.
But chronic frustration is an entirely different beast. It is a systemic error code. It points to the fact that you are caught in what she calls the perfection trap. You are holding yourself to an impossible, static ideal. The perfect partner, the perfect employee, the flawless parent.
It seems like a mathematical guarantee for misery, honestly. If you measure yourself against an absolute flawless ideal, you are going to fail 100% of the time.
Every single time.
It's like we treat concepts like happiness or competence as if they're a diploma we're going to receive in the mail once we finally finish all our chores perfectly.
And that is the core delusion of the perfection trap. Competence and happiness are not destinations where you arrive, park the car, and never have to drive again. They are dynamic, ongoing processes. When you fixate on a perfect destination, your body registers that you are expending massive amounts of energy toward a goal that is fundamentally unattainable. So that pervasive feeling of hopelessness It isn't clinical depression. It is your biology accurately reporting that you are playing a rigged game.
To break the cycle of playing a rigged game, Paula offers a journaling exercise. She says you're supposed to write down one goal that is causing you deep frustration.
Just one.
Right. Then you look at it and ask, is this goal actually realistic for the resources and energy I have right now? Or am I comparing my current reality to a perfect fictional version of myself?
It's a tough question.
It is. But why the emphasis on the physical act of journaling? Why can't we just, think our way through this while commuting to work?
Because thinking about anxiety usually just breeds more anxiety. Swirling thoughts are nebulous. They have no edges. The neuroscience of writing is actually fascinating here.
How so?
Well, the physical act of putting pen to paper forces you to take abstract, terrifying emotions and translate them into concrete, linear syntax. You cannot write a vague sentence without realizing it's vague.
Oh, that makes sense.
Yeah, journaling demands a level of radical self-honesty that simply thinking about a problem allows you to easily avoid.
It forces the abstract fear into a tangible reality. So let's look at the causality here. We have this internal pressure, the cognitive fog forcing us to slow down, and the chronic frustration of failing to meet our own impossible standards.
Exactly.
If we don't resolve that internal pressure, it has to vent somewhere. It inevitably leaks into our behavior and contaminates how we interact with the world. We start overcompensating. Which brings us to the third sign, becoming obsessively worried about what other people think.
Feedback is a necessary component of any functional society or workplace. Paula completely acknowledges that. But she draws a very distinct, hard line between constructive feedback and inhibitive feedback. Constructive feedback helps you grow. Inhibitive feedback becomes a prison where you constantly shrink your own personality, your needs, and your boundaries just to make sure everyone else in the room remains perfectly comfortable.
She actually shares a deeply personal anecdote about this. She says she spent years twisting herself into knots, trying to fit into boxes that others had designed for her.
Yeah.
She was essentially saying yes when her entire nervous system was screaming no. And she notes that abandoning herself to please others nearly destroyed her physically and mentally.
It's incredibly common, sadly.
Okay, let's unpack this. Because Paula eventually arrives at the classic airplane oxygen mask analogy. You have to put your mask on first before you assist others. Choose yourself.
Right.
But let's apply that to the reality of our listeners. In a hyper-competitive corporate environment or in a family dynamic where people genuinely rely on you, choosing your truth and putting your mask on first doesn't always look enlightened.
No, it doesn't.
It often looks selfish. And it might get you fired or cause serious relational conflict. How is this actually viable?
It's the most common pushback to this concept, and it is a crucial distinction to make. Paula tackles this head-on by redefining the mechanics of compassion.
Okay.
Taking care of your own baseline health and boundaries is not an act of selfishness. It is a prerequisite for sustained utility. Think about the physics of the oxygen mask analogy. If you pass out from hypoxia because you are busily adjusting everyone else's mask, you are now a liability. You are dead weight in an emergency.
You aren't a hero. You're just another unconscious person someone else has to save.
Precisely. If you operate from a place of chronic biological depletion, the quality of your output inevitably degrades. Your leadership becomes erratic, your parenting becomes reactive, your strategic thinking disappears.
Right, you're running on empty.
Exactly. By maintaining your own baseline, saying no when necessary, protecting your sleep, setting boundaries, you ensure that the energy you do give to others is actually high quality. You simply cannot give what you do not have.
So the practice she suggests for this is purely observational. Sometime this week, you're supposed to notice one specific moment where you hold yourself back to please someone else. You don't judge it, you just notice it. Then you write it down and date it.
That's it.
But if I'm a highly proactive person, why am I just observing it? Why isn't the advice to immediately confront the person or fix the boundary right then and there?
Because if Paula told a highly driven, exhausted person to start initiating conflict and setting hard boundaries immediately, they would just turn boundary setting into another stressful metric they have to perfectly achieve.
Oh, right. Like, I failed at setting my boundary today.
Exactly. Observation is the necessary first step because it neutralizes the emotional charge. By dating the entry, you are creating a neutral, historical baseline. You're gathering data. Over time, seeing that pattern in black and white provides the objective proof you need to eventually make a change without the anxiety of immediate confrontation.
Gathering the data before executing the strategy, that tracks.
Yeah.
But there is a very dark side to constantly putting everyone else first and just tracking those moments.
Oh, absolutely.
If you observe yourself shrinking for others over and over, and you never actually change the behavior, that friction curdles. It ferments. And that breeds the fourth sign-deep chronic resentment toward your job, your life, or the people around you.
Of all the psychological symptoms of burnout, resentment is perhaps the most insidious. It is highly toxic, but it masquerades as a protective mechanism.
Here's where it gets really interesting, because Paula's perspective gets incredibly sharp here. Her definition of resentment is totally counterintuitive.
It really is.
We usually perceive resentment as an emotion entirely caused by external factors like someone else treated us unfairly. It makes us feel morally superior. But Paula argues that resentment is actually a psychological trick we play on ourselves to dissociate from our own choices.
Yeah.
It feels like taking a powerful painkiller for a broken ankle. It immediately numbs the discomfort of having to actually set a boundary, but it guarantees the injury will never heal. And if you keep walking on it, you're doing permanent structural damage to your own agency.
That is an exceptionally accurate analogy. When we constantly blame the micromanaging boss, the terrible economy, or the unhelpful partner, we are temporarily soothing our ego.
Right.
But the structural damage is that we are actively giving away our locus of control. We are declaring, I have no power here. My reality is entirely dictated by these external forces.
I do want to make sure we don't accidentally gaslight anyone here, because there are objectively toxic workplaces, abusive partners, and terrible systemic situations that people find themselves in. It isn't always just a matter of you chose this.
And Paula is meticulous about that nuance. She explicitly acknowledges that real systemic injustices and objective victimizations absolutely exist.
Okay.
But she draws a razor-sharp distinction between experiencing genuine hardship and harboring chronic resentment. Chronic resentment becomes a secondary addiction to victimhood.
Wow. An addiction to victimhood.
Yeah, because being the victim feels safer than taking responsibility for the small percentage of the situation that you actually can control. Resentment traps you in a narrative where you never have to take the terrifying risk of changing your life.
So how do we stop taking the painkiller and actually set the bone? Paula prescribes radical honesty. The practice is to identify one area of deep resentment in your life and ask a pretty brutal question. What part of this situation did I create or allow to continue? And what is one small action I can take today to change my proximity to it?
Notice how effectively that question shifts the locus of control. It is not about self-blame. It's about reclaiming your empowerment.
Right, taking the wheel back.
Exactly. Even the smallest action like updating a resume or saying no to one extra meeting breaks the paralyzing neurochemical pattern of resentment.
Yeah.
It proves to your brain that you still have agency.
So let's follow this chain reaction to its absolute end. You are exhausted by the fog. You are frustrated by impossible standards. You abandon your own needs to please others, which brings massive walls of resentment against those very same people.
A perfect storm.
Yeah. And when you combine all of those factors, you arrive at the fifth and final sign, feeling profoundly lonely, even when you are completely surrounded by people.
This is the ultimate disconnect, and it is the natural endpoint of untreated burnout. Paula makes a beautiful, vital distinction here between being alone and being chronically lonely.
What's the difference?
Well, solitude, being alone, can be a deeply restorative chosen state. It's a space for recalibration.
But chronic loneliness isn't about physical proximity to others.
Yeah.
Paula describes it as being entirely cut off from your own authenticity. You're going through the motions of connection, but you're terrified of actually being exposed.
To illustrate this, Paula shares a profoundly moving anecdote. Following a severe cancer diagnosis, she found herself surrounded by a robust support network. Friends, family, colleagues who genuinely loved her. Yet, in the middle of a crowded room of supporters, she felt an isolating, crushing loneliness.
If I had to hypothesize why that happens, it's because she was likely still managing everyone else's emotions.
Yes, exactly.
Like, if you are exhausted and terrified, but you're playing the role of the perfect, brave patient so your family doesn't worry, nobody in that room is actually connecting with you. They're connecting with your avatar. And having people love your avatar doesn't cure your loneliness.
Spot on. When you build walls of competence and perfection to protect yourself, those walls work both ways. They keep the perceived threats out, but they also prevent any genuine affection from getting in.
Wow.
The love just bounces off the armor. You are essentially starving for connection while sitting at a banquet because you refuse to open your mouth.
It is a devastating place to be. But the cure she offers is actionable, albeit terrifying. The only way to dissolve that specific type of loneliness is to risk vulnerability. You have to allow yourself to be seen in your messy, scared, imperfect reality.
You have to.
So her final practice is to reach out to one person this week. Call a friend, and the only rule is absolutely no small talk. You bypass the pleasantries, and you share something real about how you are actually doing.
It's about breaking the seal on your own authenticity. You have to dismantle the highly optimized persona you have spent years perfecting just for a moment to let someone see the actual machinery underneath.
So if we pull all the way back and look at the entire landscape Paula has painted for us, the forced cognitive brownout of brain fog, the mathematical failure of perfectionism, the destructive physics of people-pleasing, the false comfort of resentment, and the armor of loneliness.
Yeah.
What is the grand synthesis here?
So what does this all mean? The ultimate synthesis is one of profound hope. If you are listening to this and recognizing yourself in these 5 signs, the most important takeaway is that you are not broken.
Right.
You are not failing at life or your career. These incredibly uncomfortable symptoms are not punishments from a cruel universe. They are biological and spiritual invitations.
Invitations to stop treating yourself like a machine, to release the impossible static standards you've been clinging to reclaim your agency from the numbing comfort of resentment.
Exactly.
Your nervous system is fiercely advocating for your long-term survival. It's throwing up roadblocks because the specific road you're driving on leads directly off a cliff. It is an invitation to finally pull the car over and come back home to yourself.
Beautifully said.
And I want to say something directly to you, the learner listening right now. Paula notes something tragic at the end of her piece. Our society, our massive educational institutions, the corporate ladder, they don't teach this kind of internal literacy.
No, they don't.
We are rigorously trained on how to optimize a global supply chain or, analyze market data, but we're given zero instruction on how to read the telemetry of our own nervous system.
It is an inconvenient truth that society often benefits immensely from you ignoring your dashboard lights. I mean, an employee who ignores their own depletion to hit a Q4 target is highly profitable in the short term.
But this knowledge, this immense quiet power to reset your nervous system and reclaim the trajectory of your life is completely accessible. It just requires you to redirect your natural curiosity inward.
Absolutely.
And I want to leave you with one final provocative thought to mull over as you go about the rest of your day. Paula has given us an absolute masterclass in how to read our body's warning signs, the psychological check engine lights.
She really has.
But what if you applied this exact same intense analytical awareness to your body's positive signals? If brain fog is the biological red light forcing you to stop, what does your body's green light of perfect, authentic alignment actually feel like?
That's a great question.
Is it a sudden physical lightness in your chest? Is it a deep, resonant clarity in your voice when you say yes to something you truly want? And more importantly, are you paying close enough attention to recognize that green light when it finally turns on? Because you don't just want to know when the tank is empty. You deserve to know what it feels like to drive with a full tank, no tape on the dashboard, and a clear road entirely of your own choosing.
Take the tape off the dashboard. The data is waiting for you.
Listen to the engine. We'll catch you on the next deep dive.
Listen, if something shifted inside you during this episode, even just a little flutter of recognition, that's your soul saying yes. Don't ignore it. Subscribe right now. Share this with that woman in your life who's barely holding it together, but pretending everything is fine. You know exactly who I'm talking about, because you know it. The truth is this: when you give, it comes back to you 100 times over. And if you're sitting there thinking, I need more of this, like now, I've got you. Check the links below for my free resources. They are yours. Take them. And if you're ready to go all in on yourself, my 7-day mindset and body reset is waiting for you. Let's upgrade your nervous system, rewire those old patterns, and activate the higher version of you that's been waiting way too long. You don't have to figure this out alone anymore. Everything you need, it's already inside you. You just need to remember. So please subscribe, for you, not for me. Stay with me, and together we can awaken the world. I'm Paula, and I'll see you in the next episode.